I used to think poison always tasted like metal. I was wrong. In our kitchen, it tasted like love, like pumpkin soup with a family pesto, like poppy seed cake, like tea for the nerves. It wore my mother-in-law's lipstick smile and my husband's grateful nod. The first time it brushed my tongue, nothing exploded. A faint bitterness lingered on the back of my throat, and by nightfall the man I loved was dizzy and gray. You don't call that a crime. You call it a bug, a long week, an early bedtime. You tuck your fear away with the spoons. My name is Lisa. I am 32 and live on the third floor of a Portland walk-up with windows that drink the rain. I talk to the plants on the sill like neighbors. My monstera is Ing, the Zamioculcas is Ilsa, and I have been married for 5 years to John, an engineer who can make a broken hinge behave with the authority of a priest. I'm a project manager at a small agency. I drink oat milk coffee at 7:30 a.m., read emails by 8 a.m., and keep deadlines the way other people keep pets. Fed, named, loved. From the sidewalk, our life looks ordinary. Inside, it felt soft and sure until Marianne started arriving in beige coats with jars tucked in her tote like secrets. Marianne never called herself my mother-in-law. She favored John's mother, as if the title were an address I didn't have the key to. She spoke in compliments that cut. "Your apartment is so cozy," she'd say, glancing at my second-hand rug. "It's brave to decorate on a budget." She brought offerings, a mason jar of pumpkin soup with a green paste in a small screw-top jar. "Parsley pesto, my dear," she told John, not me. "Good for the stomach, good for the nerves." I twisted the lid, and beneath the parsley rose an undertone I couldn't place. Bitter, a little medicinal, like an old apothecary's drawer left open in summer. We ate, we smiled, and by 10 p.m. John was sweating on the couch with a headache and a slow sea rocking behind his eyes. It was easy to explain away that first time. His father, Paul, had been declining at home for months. Words like palliative and symptom-oriented floated through the family group chat with the solemnity of church bells. Grief is heavy, even when you don't know where to set it down. But when Marianne reappeared 2 weeks later with poppy seed cake, "Don't be silly, John. I know what I'm doing." The same pattern returned. By 9 p.m. he was exhausted, his skin the color of unlit wax. By morning he swore he felt fine, and I swore I was overthinking. I started a list anyway, because order calms me. Saturday, soup plus pesto. Dizziness, nausea, headache. 2 weeks later, poppy cake, fatigue. Between those, no visit, no symptoms. I folded the paper into the drawer, embarrassed by the drama of my own pen. When Marianne texted that she would stop by for a bit with tea to soothe John's stress, my yes came out higher than I meant. She poured from a thermos that smelled of lemon balm and hops, and something else that made my tongue feel like a coin. John drank. After the episode of a show we weren't really watching, his head sank on my shoulder. Then his body went heavy, as if sleep had a hand on his spine. At 2:10 a.m., I woke to the sound of him stumbling to the bathroom. In the morning, I opened the thermos, stole a spoonful into a jam jar, and wrote Marianne's T3 on a strip of tape. I hid it behind Ilsa, as if I were a biologist smuggling a specimen past customs. I told myself I would not fall down the rabbit hole of search results. Instead, I clung to the daytime. Status calls, briefs, color-coded calendars. Around noon, John phoned, cheerful. "Feel great," he said. "Mom's tea did the trick." That evening, Marianne called to ask after her boy, relieved, almost triumphant. "You just have to steer things in the right direction," she said. I hung up and wrote Tuesday, fine. Relief is fickle. It never lasts until morning. Paul faltered, then slipped. Marianne's messages sharpened. "He's barely eating." Doctor says it's time to take care of certain things. John drove to Gresham to sit by his father's bed, and I stayed with my guilt and my list. The next day, Mary Ann let herself in with a key I'd forgotten she had and set a pot of broth on our stove. I stood nearby, pretending to polish silverware, and watched her stir with the attention of a priest at Mass. "You should let me show you a few herbal tricks, Lisa," she said pleasantly. "It's important to support a man." My spoon clinked the sink in answer. John complimented the broth and woke at 3:40 a.m., nauseous and shaking, while I held a bowl and my breath. In the shower, the steam loosened my certainty. Maybe I was paranoid, the word I feared most. When I came out wrapped in a towel, Mary Ann was in the hallway. "I just wanted to check on things," she said, casual as weather. She had the key. "Of course I do. I'm his mother." The emphasis carved the air. In the kitchen, I shifted my secret jar a hair's breadth to the left and felt like a thief with a good reason. By then, the pattern had teeth. Visit, consumption, symptoms, recovery. Then again. I arranged my notes in columns, drew arrows, circled dates until they looked like targets. But paper doesn't keep a person safe. The next morning, over coffee, I chose a new tool, my voice. "Sit for a minute," I told John gently. "I think you always feel worse after your mom's been here. I've written it down: soup, tea, cake, broth." He listened, the way a kind man listens to a frightened child. "Mom would never hurt me," he said, soft and certain. I nodded because I love him, and because I had not yet learned that love sometimes means risking being wrong. "Do what you have to do," he added, kissing my forehead. I made another promise to myself as the door closed at 8:15 a.m. If he couldn't see it yet, I would keep collecting until the truth refused to be ignored. That afternoon, the family chat chimed. "Stopping by briefly this evening," Mary Ann wrote. "Prepared something very mild for John, good for the nerves." My thumbs hovered, then typed what my face could not show. "We're looking forward to it." On my way to the bus stop, I could hear my pulse in my coat sleeves. Suspicion had moved in and would not be dislodged by manners. If bitterness had a source, I intended to find it. By Wednesday morning, paranoia had turned into procedure. I lined up jars in the fridge, labeled, dated, and sealed, like small prisoners waiting for trial. Mary Ann's T3, Casserole M2, Broth 4. Each was a whisper of bitterness I could no longer explain away. That day, I walked to the neighborhood pharmacy under a fine Portland drizzle. The pharmacist, an older man with rimless glasses, listened quietly as I described John's dizziness, fatigue, and nausea. "Could herbs cause that?" I asked. "Some can," he said. "It depends on the dosage and combinations. Keep samples. Don't alter them. And if symptoms persist, see a doctor immediately." I left with a pamphlet and a shaking hand, called the Oregon Poison Center from the curb, and heard calm voices giving calm instructions. Keep the samples. Don't self-diagnose. Get medical tests. Most of all, don't be alone. So I called Sophie. My best friend since college. She didn't need the whole story to understand my voice. "Come over," she said. "I'll make coffee." "You talk, I'll listen." By the time I reached her apartment in Hawthorne, I was trembling. Between sips of coffee, I told her everything: the soup, the pesto, the tea, the tiny drop from a bottle. "John thinks I'm paranoid," I said. Sophie leaned forward. "When your intuition is this strong, it's not panic, it's pattern recognition, but you need an ally, someone in his family who isn't under Mary Ann's spell." I thought of Aunt Teresa, Paul's quiet sister, the one who always stayed on the edges of family dinners but noticed everything. "Call her," Sophie said. "Tell her you're worried, not accusing. And Lisa, go see Paul. You need to see what's happening in that house." That afternoon, I drove to Gresham. Marianne opened the door with her usual smile, too wide, too polished. "Lisa," she sang, "what a surprise!" Inside, the air smelled of lavender, wax, and something sharp underneath. Paul lay in the bedroom, skin thin as paper. I sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand. "I'm here, Papa Paul," I whispered. His eyelids fluttered. "Lisa," he breathed, a faint smile ghosting across his face. "I'm taking care of John," I promised, though I wasn't sure I could. When I returned to the kitchen, Marianne was surrounded by bundles of dried herbs, each tied with precision. Small tin boxes labeled lemon balm, yarrow, St. John's wort, and behind them, a brown bottle without a label. When I looked at it, she moved it into a cabinet in one fluid motion. "I'll make tea for you too," she said sweetly. "You young women need to calm down sometimes." I thanked her with a voice that felt borrowed and stepped outside under the pretense of air. Teresa was waiting by the playground around the block as promised. "You're worried," she said. "Yes," I whispered. We walked slowly, and I told her just enough. When I finished, she sighed. "I'm not shocked. Marianne's always been possessive, especially when she feels something slipping away. Paul is slipping away, and that means control is too." She hesitated, glancing at me. "There's something else. Years ago, Paul made his will. If he dies, half goes to Marianne, half to John. But if John dies within 30 days of Paul's death, everything reverts to Marianne." The words dropped like stones in water. "So if both die close together," I couldn't finish. Teresa nodded grimly. She'd inherit everything. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You think she'd actually?" "I think," Teresa said quietly. "You should protect yourself, and don't face her alone." When I returned home that evening, Marianne's tea was still on the table. 2 cups. "Drink, dear," she urged. "It's good for the nerves." I smiled, lied about an errand, and poured it down the sink when she wasn't looking. The next morning, I called Dr. Thompson, our family physician. "My husband's been having recurring dizziness and nausea," I said carefully. "Could we come in?" He offered an early slot at 8 a.m. "Bring him," he said. "We'll talk quietly before the office opens." Convincing John wasn't easy. "It's for my peace of mind," I told him. "Please." He sighed. "For your peace of mind, then." At the appointment, Dr. Thompson took my list, examined John, drew blood, and said, "You should eat what feels right, not what others think is good for you. Sometimes love can be a little too medicinal." Outside, John's expression hardened. "I'm not your experiment," he said. "You're my husband," I answered softly. "I'm trying not to lose you." That evening, a new message blinked in the family chat. "Stopping by for a bit. Something mild for John, good for sleep." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I made a plan. I charged my old phone, set it on top of the fridge with the camera pointed at the counter, and waited for 5 p.m. When the doorbell rang, Marianne's humming came first. She stepped in, perfect as always, a Tupperware of rice and a small jar of sauce in her hands. "This will help my boy's nerves," she said. John smiled weakly and sat. I stayed back, pretending to clean. I watched her spoon rice onto the plate, pour sauce, then, there. A flick of her wrist, a tiny bottle, a single drop falling before she stirred. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Here, darling," she said, setting the plate down. John ate, complimented her cooking, and soon after lay pale and trembling on the sofa. I waited until he slept, then retrieved the phone from its hiding spot. The footage was grainy but clear. Her hand, the bottle, the drop. I watched it 3 times before the tremors started. Proof. The kind that ends illusions, or marriages. By dawn, I decided to show him. "John," I said softly, sitting on the bed, "you need to see something." He rubbed his eyes, weary. Later. Now. My voice was steel. I pressed play. He watched, silent, until the drop fell. His face went blank, then angry, then terrified. That could be anything, he muttered. Vitamins, extracts. You're sensitive about these things. You saw it, I whispered. She's been doing this for months. He turned away. That's my mother. She would never hurt me. Then explain why you're sick every time she visits. His jaw clenched. You're overreacting. The word hit harder than a slap, but when he left for work, I knew something in him had shifted. The seed of doubt had finally been planted. By Friday morning, the storm inside our marriage was quieter, but only because both of us were holding our breath. John barely spoke over breakfast. He stirred his coffee like it might reveal an answer at the bottom of the cup. I watched him, memorizing the small details. The way his fingers trembled slightly when he lifted the spoon. The way his shoulders sagged under invisible weight. Mom's coming by later, he said finally. His tone was flat, practiced. She said she made soup for both of us. I told her you might not be home. My pulse spiked. Did she say what kind? Pumpkin, he muttered. Said it's good for the nerves. That phrase again. Good for the nerves. The same phrase she'd used every single time. I nodded, forcing a smile. I'll be home, I said. And this time, I meant it. That afternoon, I left work early and drove across town to meet Teresa in a small cafe. The place smelled of cinnamon and rain. I placed my phone on the table and showed her the footage. She watched silently, her lips tightening with every second. When it ended, she leaned back and exhaled slowly. She's done this before, she said quietly. My heart stumbled. What do you mean? When Paul's mother died, there were rumors. She was taking herbal remedies Marianne mixed for her. Everyone thought it was grief talking. I didn't. She looked at me then, eyes heavy with years of silence. I'll help you, Teresa said, but we need to be careful. She'll never stop if she thinks she can still control him. We made a plan. I would invite Marianne for dinner, our dinner in our home. She'd bring her usual remedies. Teresa would arrive halfway through, unannounced, pretending she just wanted to drop off a casserole. And on the counter, waiting, would be a small test kit I'd ordered from the pharmacy. Something discreet that could detect certain toxins in liquids. If she reached for that bottle again, we'd have our proof. That evening, the sun was already dipping when the doorbell rang. Marianne entered like a gust of perfume and judgment. Oh, Lisa, she smiled. You look pale. You really should try my ginseng blend. Works wonders for exhaustion. Dinner began normally. Chicken, rice, conversation stretched thin like a fragile thread. Then, as always, she reached into her tote. The small brown bottle appeared like a magician's trick. This helps digestion, she murmured, unscrewing the cap. I didn't move. I just watched. A knock on the door made her flinch. Teresa's voice floated in, light but firm. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt dinner. Marianne's hand froze midair. Teresa smiled, stepping in. Just thought I'd drop off some dessert for my favorite nephew. Her eyes flicked to the bottle, then to me. New recipe? Marianne hesitated. Just some herbs. Teresa walked closer, her voice gentle but razor sharp. Mind if I take a look? I love herbal blends. Marianne's knuckles whitened. It's private. John's voice broke the silence. Mom, give it to her. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then, slowly, she handed it over. Teresa set the bottle on the counter beside the small test kit I had laid out earlier, covered by a napkin. Without a word, I lifted the cloth and dipped a dropper into the liquid. The test paper darkened instantly, first pale yellow, then a violent shade of green-black, a color the pharmacist had told me to remember. Marianne's lips parted. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. It was for his health. It's what Paul needed, what John needs. The doctors don't see how fragile men are. They need—
Enough, John snapped. The word cracked like a whip.
He stood, eyes blazing with disbelief and grief. "You've been poisoning me." Marianne reached for him, desperate. "No, sweetheart, He stepped back. "Don't ever touch me again."
The aftermath. That night was a blur of flashing red and blue lights, police statements, the cold hum of the refrigerator where the evidence was bagged and sealed. Marianne didn't fight when they took her. She just kept murmuring that she only meant to help. John sat on the couch long after they left, face pale and hollow.
"She raised me," he whispered. "I never saw it." I touched his hand. "You weren't supposed to." She made sure of that. He nodded, tears breaking free. "I could have died." "Yes," I said softly, "but you didn't." Outside, dawn began to color the world again. Soft pink, almost forgiving. 2 weeks later, the test results confirmed everything. Traces of aconite and belladonna, plants that had no business in anyone's kitchen. John hasn't spoken to his mother since. The house feels different now, lighter but lonelier. Sometimes I catch him standing by the window, watching the rain, like he's waiting for answers that will never come. As for me, I've stopped labeling jars, stopped trying to organize the fear, because now I know. Evil doesn't always hide in strangers. Sometimes it smiles at you across the dinner table.